Thank you for inviting me again for this wonderful seminar. Today I'm going to talk about what the impact of the COVID on a global economy and Korea economy, and how the US election is going to impact the financial market and especially Korea financial market. So let me go through some key findings I have found since the COVID started early this year. So next graph. Next PowerPoint. So what we find for last 6 or 7 months since the virus is this virus, this recession is the one of the worst recession we haven't seen since a World War II. When we have this kind of a shock, usually we tend to recover, kind of V-shaped recovery. But this time, we are not sure whether we'll see a V-shaped recovery after this recession. If you look at the World War One, when there was the Spanish flu, there was some pandemic right after World War One, you see a W, or sometimes a double W shape of the recovery. So there was up and down, and the recovery was very slow because of the pandemic. So if we see some second wave of the COVID for this year, we'll see very slow recovery. So, but if we see some vaccines are available, and if we see economy start to open from next year, then probably we'll see V-shape of recovery we haven't seen from other other recession. Next page. Another finding I find is we see a very different kind of the economic shock globally. So some economies such as China and Taiwan was doing much better than economies like UK and US. So probably it's because the economies who more depend on the manufacturing side, and the economy who can control the pandemic only could do better than the economies who are more dependent on service sector and who cannot control the pandemic. But this graph shows usually when there is some recession shock, some economies tend to show better, and that kind of momentum continues for a decade. So right now it seems like China is doing quite well, and probably they could do outperform than other economies after the financial crisis. So after this shock, probably we'll see some continuation of the China kind of dominance global economy. Next page. And as you can see, China kind of rebound V-shape, and in third quarter they also continue to grow. And actually, the year-on-year basis, they're outperforming in quarter two. One interesting thing in Chinese recovery is in Q2, growth was driven by the government spending, but in Q3, the growth was driven by the consumption. So in all over kind of the segment of the economy, China shows us up some rebound. On the other hand, in next page, in Europe and US side, even though we see some V-shape of recovery in retail sales, the manufacturing side is very, very kind of still stagnant. So probably because China could rebound quite quickly in manufacturing side, because the consumption side of the Europe and US was resilient. So that kind of a benefit could have benefited the Chinese rebound. When you look at the Korea in next page, Korea also could recover quite quickly in Q3. So we see some V-shaped recovery in Korea too. And also it is driven by mostly by the net export. Export was strong, and the manufacturing side was strong. But still, we see a Korea case, consumption is still very benign. So probably we are following the Chinese case, then we'll see some strong rebound in consumption in Q4, or we may fall into the a more developed economy trap, not showing any rebound in consumption sector side. Next page. As you can see, in a global economic trend wise, we see some V-shape of recovery, but we haven't come back to the pre-COVID level. So even though we see a rebound, the rebound itself is not guaranteed. Like we went back to pre-COVID cases. So it means like every economy tended to do more fiscal spending, more monetary easing to support the economy. So we should expect more like a government supported policy in 2021. Another thing we find in next page is the sentiment is quite different, like a manufacturing side and a consumer side. Sometimes like it is quite different from the big corporate and small corporate. So SMEs are hurt more than big corporates, and also like the producers are doing better than consumers probably, because it is a social distancing is hurting more SME side than the big corporate and more like a big manufacturing side, which does not require a lot of human capital as an input. So we can see like the manufacturing side sentiment is improving while the consumer sentiment is not improving at all. In Korea's case, in next page, you can see a very K-shaped kind of the bound in sentiment-wise. Like manufacturing sentiment is improving quite rapidly, but the consumer sentiment, it tended to improve, but we see it's kind of dropping again. So probably after this shock, everybody is talking about we may see some K-shaped recovery, but we see the sentiment is showing kind of this trend, and when the pandemic is over, so there will be some obviously winners and losers because of this shock. In next page, you can see another thing, important thing is like we have not seen much inflation in this kind of the recession. When the government is supplying a lot of liquidity, like this time, we should see the inflation, because inflation is after all nothing but the money supply. But even though there has been a lot of money supply, we have not seen the inflation rate. Probably it's because the money is not kind of circulating at all. So even though the central bank is providing liquidity, the money is sitting in the bank. So it is not circulating at all. So that's why it is not creating the inflation, or probably because there is a very limited the sentiment and the demand. So because people are so concerned about the economy, people tend to save now instead of spending. Even though government is giving them the money to spend, the consumers are reluctant to spend. So there is a kind of creating, not circulating the money, and not creating the inflation, even with a lot of liquidity, the abundance in the market. I think when we talk about the inflation, there always we talk about the labor and the inflation. So as you can see, we see in a very slow like kind of employment market. Like as you can see, there are two different kind of unemployment level. Like in US, unemployment rate hiked and then kind of shows some moderation now. But in Europe side, the unemployment rate is gradually rising up. Probably it's because of two different labor environment. Like US is more flexible labor market, and a European market is more inflexible labor market. Probably that's why the unemployment rate is controlled better in all these states. But when the economy kind of recession contracts, they start to increase it. So anyway, we see the same pattern in Korea, because Korean market labor market is inflexible. We could actually do better than other economy employment-wise, but I mean, in the long run, we cannot actually control all the unemployment. As you can see in this graph, like even Chinese case, like even though they could come back and very strongly rebound, their employment market is still challenged. So even though like China shows some positive growth, like we see a lot of labor market slag in China, which means like inflation is going to be very, very slow, because like there will be some the abundant labor available globally. As you can see in Korea's case, like inflation is very benign in Korea. Like it has been negative the inflation, and then we see some positive inflation, but still very less than 1%. So with the government's target is 2%. So 1% inflation is very, very low. And also, as you can see in right-hand side graph, the job market is very benign. Like the job loss is over 300,000 for this year. So which means like the government has to do more to drive the growth. As you can see in next page, every government has done the monetary easing to support the economy. If you have a room to cut the interest rate to support the economy, they did it. If you do not have a room to cut the interest rate, then they did the quantitative easing. As you can see, BOJ, ECB, and Fed, they did quantitative easing. Like the money size of the quantitative easing was just for this year is almost same as quantitative easing they've done right after the financial crisis. So the money which is provided this year is the same as the money they kind of released for 10 years right after the financial crisis. That much like this pandemic shock was big because it was hurting the demand side directly. And also like a government has done a lot of the financial kind of fiscal stimulus to boost the economy. The interesting thing is like depending on government kind of government balance, some economy could do a lot of the fiscal spending, some economy couldn't do a lot of fiscal spending. So I think the government's kind of the budget balance is very important. Like if you have a very low government debt, then you could do a lot of spending for this year. Like Germany is one of the case. So which means like governments like the budget balance is always important in stress case. So if possible, I think it is recommendable to maintaining the like a sound the government budget for future shock. Because of this kind of the government spending, we see like a global debt level. In next page, you can see a global debt level is increasing quite rapidly. So we see like almost like 250% of the government debt level, and you can solve the liquidity problem providing a lot of liquidity, but sooner or later, you cannot solve the solvency problem. So the debt will come back to you. Someone has to pay, and which means like we have to do restructuring. Otherwise, we cannot solve it. As of now, we are not in position to talk about the solvency. Like when the patient is so sick, like you have to save them, and then you have to do some operation. Like right now, like you have to provide a lot of liquidity to the economy to be alive. But when things are settled, you have to do surgery and do restructuring eventually. In this time, like you can see number of default rising globally, like a number of firms like who is going to default increasing quite rapidly in 2020. In Korea is the same case. Like we call it zombie corporate, like the corporate who are not able to pay back the debt with all the profit they make. They used to be around 700 corporates, but we expect like will increase like 5,000 by the end of the year, which is around almost like 25% of the Korean corporates. So, which means like because even with a lot of liquidity, we cannot solve the solvency, and then we need we may see a lot of defaults coming in probably next year or following year, then which requires the restructuring. So I mean, right now we are not in position to talk about it, but we have to bear the pain eventually. In the meantime, the COVID-19 is increasing quite rapidly globally, like especially in Europe, in US. Like we see some lockdowns in European economies, and also like we see some signs of lockdown in US. Like it depends on state, but there's some cities are locked down. But the U.S. government is adamant not locking down again. Like even the President-elect Biden said he's not going to lock down the economy because it's so painful for SMEs. As you can see, like the U.S. has also like a political issue. Like we expect that Biden is going to win easily, but we are long. Like probably because I interpret this as like even though some people do not like the Trump, they may like a Trump policy. So even though they do not agree with the Trump, but they may agree with the Trump economic policy. Probably that's why brought a lot of the shy Trump into the election. So that is causing a bit of the political instability in US. But I strongly believe in US democracy system, and eventually the Biden will become the president. I think under this kind of scenario, people didn't like the Biden's probably tax policy. As a financial market perspective, they do not like the tax. They may like Trump's no tax policy. So when there was no blue wave, when the Biden is elected president, but the Senate is controlled by the Republican, the financial market seems to like it, because the Democrat is not going to be able to increase the tax because they need approval from the Senate, which not be approved. So somehow, like a financial market perspective, we tend to like it, and that is creating more or less the positive economic sentiment, and flows to the emerging market, and benefiting emerging market economies. In next page, we thought dollar was too strong even before the election. We expect the dollar is going to depreciate, but especially compared to the emerging market, but we have not seen it. Some currencies performing okay, but China, Yuan, and the Korea won for all the step, but there's still there are many emerging market economies not doing as well. The dollar is still strong relative to other emerging market currencies. We thought it is because in next page we can see there was volatility. To money comes to emerging market, there should be that kind of less volatility, because people are so concerned with the volatility. Back then, before the election, there was uncertainty of the election, and China disputed with the US. The money does not flow into the developing economy because there was a kind of risk of sentiment. But if that kind of uncertainty goes away, and if the market is becoming more risk on, then I think the emerging market is going to benefit because of the capital flows. So right now we start to see after the election, some emerging market currencies shows kind of the appreciation. Korea won is one of them. It is mainly because globally the risk sentiment has been improving. As you can see in this graph, even though Korean Kospi market has done really well, but the Korean won did not appreciate in most part of this year. It's because there was capital outflow. Even though Korean equity market improved, it's because driven by the domestic investors, not foreign investors. So foreign investors actually sold out the equity and left the Korean market. But they may come back to the Korean market, which means which is going to very positive Korean won. So moving forward, right now Korean won is moving around 1100, 1110 level. But if the foreigners come back and to invest Korean equity market, then there will be some upside Korean won appreciation. So probably end of the year we will see Korea won is breaking 1100. If the yuan break the 6.5, then I think that there will be a high chance for Korean won appreciating below 1100. So I'm going to stop here for my presentation. If you have any questions about my presentation today, please send me an email and I'll be happy to answer your question. Thank you again for inviting me. And we are not able to see each other for this year because of the pandemic. So I will look forward to seeing you personally next year. Thank you.